So we have a debate today. Why do these Trump loyalists continue to engage in this magical thinking that a terrorist would somehow want to walk 100 miles across the southern desert when they could simply hop on a plane like the 9/11 ones did? Check this out. Leave your comments and subscribe to our channel. But let me start out with Eric Caron. He's a former U.S. special agent and diplomat, the author of a new book, Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. His website, switchedonlife.com. Eric, welcome to the program.
Hey, Tom, it's a privilege to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I have a quote from you that it's astonishing that after 9/11, the Democrat Party, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, there's no such thing as a Democrat Party, is failing to see the gravity of an open border. They won't recognize the importance of border security even as MS-13 members pour into America. Just saw a 16-year-old boy being killed by MS-13 members. You realize MS-13 started as a Los Angeles street gang?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I don't get here, well, lay out your case.
Well, my case is simple. That this president recognizes the threat. He sees the threat matrix from transnational crime groups, i.e. MS-13 and the cartels operating in Mexico. And he sees the threat from state sponsors of terror, such as Iran, North Korea, Sudan, Syria, and what they're planning to do against us. And he sees the threat from the terrorist organizations as well that are internationally and as well as operating here in America. So he understands that without border security, we're doomed to repeat ourselves based on what happened on 9/11. It's simple.
So you're suggesting that the 9/11 hijackers came across the southern border to get into this country?
No, they came across the northern border.
They flew in here on legal visas, every single one of them.
Yeah, and they overstayed their visas.
Right, but they all came through airports. What, how is building a wall on the southern border going to stop a 9/11? What terrorist who is serious terrorist, somebody who's serious, who has resources, intelligence, as in competence, can think clearly and has some cash, as these guys did. What person like that is going to crawl on his hands and knees across 100 miles of desert on the southern border when he can get on a damn airplane and buy a first-class ticket out of Saudi Arabia? By the way, speaking of state sponsors of terrorism, as you well know, Saudi Arabia's Wahhabism is the inspiration of ISIS, and Donald Trump is sucking up to its murderous dictator. Because his son-in-law wants to borrow another $1 billion from them. But what terrorist in his right mind is going to crawl across the southern border when they can just fly into the United States on a first-class ticket?
Well, Tom, we do know that terror organizations are operating in Central and South America. We do know that they've across the
absolutely, Eric.
So,
and you know who put them there? It was Ronald Reagan back in the 1980s. The Contras, he was feeding all kinds of money to the right-wing death squads. Elliot Abrams was feeding this stuff. George Herbert Walker Bush almost went to jail for this if Bill Barr had not recommended that he pardon Abrams and Ollie North and Casper Weinberger and all those guys, because they were the ones who were preparing to testify against him. It was a huge scandal. It was front page of the New York Times all the way across the headlines on Christmas Day of 1992. Sure, there's right-wing terrorists down there all over the place. That's why all these people are showing up on our southern border. They're fleeing that terror.
Yeah, and I think we also have to understand, Tom, the nexus between terror groups and the transnational crime groups. They're in some cases, not all, but in some cases, they are in fact working hand in glove and supporting one another.
Of course.
So let's not forget that.
Of course, but what does that have to do with why we need a wall on our southern border to stop terrorists who can get on a plane and fly, Saudi Arabian Airlines or whatever the name of their carrier is?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to harden all our ports of entry, not just our land borders, but our seaports as well.
So how do you do that? You've got something like 5 million people, I believe, a month coming into the United States from foreign countries. It's been a long time since I've seen the numbers, but it's millions of people a month. They're coming into the United States on tourist visas, on business visas, on student visas, on work visas. Hell, Donald Trump is hiring them. He just applied for 20 some odd new visas for his hotel or his golf course in New Jersey because they busted him for having illegal aliens working there for the last 18 years. I mean, he doesn't want to hire Americans. He wants to hire foreigners, and they come over here. How do you know that they're not terrorists? And what does that have to do with building a wall?
Well, we need to vet people who get on airplanes.
We already do that.
And we need to do a better job at that. We need to screen containers that come into America for WMD agents.
But what does that have to do with the wall?
Well, because it's all part of a larger strategy to keep us safe, Tom. I mean, we cannot, because bad guys will go where it's soft. And so the president is listening to the men and women of law enforcement and saying, we need assets.
You know, the bad guys in south of our border, Eric, excuse me, the bad guys south of our border are not sitting around thinking, gee, I'm a robber and I'm a rapist. I think I'll go to the United States to do my robbery and rape. No, they'd much rather do robbery and rape in Mexico, where it's a lot easier to get away with. I mean, or for that matter, go into Guatemala, in Honduras, or El Salvador, countries that Reagan and U.S. foreign policy ravaged, and where they not only can get away with it, but the government will openly support them. They're not trying to figure out how to get to the United States.
Tom, what do you say to the mother just last week whose son at 15 years old was murdered by MS-13 in Virginia and Maryland? Slaughtered 100 times, stabbed.
I would say that it's really a shame that Ronald Reagan was pumping crack cocaine into Los Angeles back in the 80s, leading to the beginning of the MS-13 gang.
Okay. If that's what you believe.
Well, it's documentable fact. I mean, come on, Eric. I mean, terrible things are going to happen. But, for you and Fox News and groups like this to take, like that woman in San Francisco, it turns out the guy dropped the gun on the ground and accidentally shot her. But, the illegal immigrant who killed what's-her-name, who turned into like this iconic character on Fox News. Everybody who watches Fox News can repeat her name. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. I'm sure you know it.
Yeah, I can't. No, I don't.
Okay. But you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's like you take the exception. We know that immigrants to the United States, illegal immigrants to the United States, and I'm no fan of illegal immigration. I think that we should start, when Ronald Reagan in 1986 stopped prosecuting wealthy white employers for hiring people who are in this country without documentation. Prior to 86, we did not have a problem. Post-86, we've had a problem because he turned on this giant magnet. Now, we all know, looking back at the record and the documents that are available now, that Reagan did that in an attempt to destroy the unions, particularly in the construction and meatpacking industries. And he was successful. In less than a decade, those unions were basically those industries were basically de-unionized. And that was his goal. And he was successful. But no president since has started enforcing those laws. I think we should enforce those laws.
Yes. Tom, you get no arguments from me on worksite enforcement. I did it. It's in my book. I arrested 361 illegal aliens at a U.S. defense contractor in 2007.
Yeah, and like I said, the Trump organization keeps hiring these people. But what we know about that illegal immigrant population is that they actually commit fewer crimes than native-born Americans. And so you can pick one or two crimes and try to imply that these people are robbers, rapists, and murderers, and certainly there will be a few among them, just like there are a few among any population.
Yeah.
But but to say that is like saying because Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire and a pedophile, all billionaires are pedophiles. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, Tom, I hear what you're saying. The stats regarding illegal immigration and the crime that they commit is kind of fuzzy, granted. But I've seen numbers: 500 homicides, 1,000 homicides a year committed by illegal aliens. But you know what? At the end of the day, if that's your son or daughter killed one illegal alien who commits a murder against someone,
but they're not committing the murder because they're an illegal alien. They're committing the murder because they're a murderer. We need to stop murderers. You've got murderers.
They're here illegally, Tom. They weren't allowed. They weren't supposed to be in our country. You have a front door in your home, right, Tom?
Once again, Eric, you're trying to suggest that people who come into this country illegally are doing so to commit crimes, and I'm not buying that. Maybe the crime of working.
Tom. Some of them are. Some of them are coming to America to work. I get it. I see it. But there are some, you have to admit, right, that there are many illegal aliens who come to America who commit
You're
crimes.
talking about criminals. You deal with that through your criminal justice system. You're not going to. If somebody wants to, if somebody is a real, Eric, think about this for a second. I mean, just logic here, right? I'll give you the last minute after because we're going to hit a hard break in a minute and a half. If somebody is a true, let's say, a serial killer, a genuine psychopath, bent on, raping and murdering as many people as he possibly can, that's his goal. Yeah. And he's sitting around thinking, I think I'll go to the United States and commit these kinds of crimes. Why would he walk across 100 miles of desert when he could go to Tijuana and get a visa and drive across the border like literally 1 million people a day do in Tijuana?
Tom, when people come to America illegally, they're committing not just immigration crimes, but
not the people who are coming through the desert, Eric. They're the desperate people. The stone cold killers are coming in on airplanes and by car.
No doubt. But these people are coming in and they're assuming the identity, in many cases, of U.S. citizens. They're purchasing false Social Security cards.
Sure.
They're getting licenses that are false. They're committing insurance fraud.
We should stop all that stuff, Eric, and we should stop the magnet by putting white employers in jail. But
I agree. You got no arguments for me. I outlined that in my book, Switched On: The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent, when I arrested 361 illegal aliens at a U.S. defense contractor.
Okay. Eric Caron, a former U.S. Special Agent and diplomat, author of a new book, Switched On: The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. SwitchedOnLife.com is the website for his book. Eric, thanks for dropping by today.